Rugby World Cup 2023, folks, is but a week away. Who are some of the form players going into the tournament? We're going to narrow it down to 15 guys, which is a horrendously small number and is going to emit more than we include, but such is the nature of the beast. Maybe if you guys are playing some of the old fantasy rugby on World Rugby's website, the Rugby World Cup website, fantasy, you might get some ideas of who you might want to pick in your fantasy side, but yeah, we'll go through 15 guys, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on who you would have for this one. Also written up a piece for Planet Rugby, which is, hopefully an interesting read as well. Hopefully include a few stats and whatnot. But, Planet Rugby is generally a great resource for all things rugby. It's generally where I get all my lineups from, actually, when I'm doing the old match previews. Very consistent resource, and, check it out down in the description. Props! I'm starting with an Aussie, and I'm going for Gus Bell, Angus Bell, loose head prop. If you're playing fantasy, it doesn't really matter. It's just prop. But goodness me, he's been in cracking form this year. It's weird to think that he didn't really play Super Rugby. I think he played the first game for the Waratahs, got injured, didn't play for the rest of the season. He comes into the squad. James Slipper is the kind of incumbent loose head prop who is also named captain. And somehow, in the matter of weeks, Gus Bell displaces him with some big scrummaging, big carrying, and big tackling. This is exactly what you want for your props. Maybe not necessarily in that order, but he is one of the best ball-carrying props you'll see. In between him and Tupou, that's a deadly combination. But Gus Bell, he's been in phenomenal form. So well done to old Gus. He's one for your fantasy team, maybe. This guy, old Franz Malherbe, is maybe less of a kind of fantasy team player because he's more of like a purist's pick in that he is just a dominant scrummager, which they don't often reward with things like player of the match, with world player of the year, with fantasy points, essentially. How many points has that guy won the Springboks just by winning scrum penalties? It's a lot. He's got a dominant scrum, and his work rate's actually gone up a lot. It's one thing that's been criticised about Franz Malherbe, but I feel like his fitness is maybe at a higher level than we've ever seen it before. He's really making, I feel like the last game he made 7 or 8 tackles. He used to be a real low number of tackles guy. He would just kind of fill in the line, maybe clear out some rucks, but he's been getting in there and making some tackles as well. So that last game against New Zealand just proved in terms of form going into the World Cup, that guy is doing well. Likewise, his teammate Malcolm Marx, he's been scoring tries. We've been seeing him do that for years, ever since he was at the Lions in Super Rugby. He's continued his try-scoring record. He's great from the back of a maul. He's great over the ball with winning turnovers as well. And the line-out was always the question about him, but the Springboks line-out in recent years has also been pretty solid. Took a little bit of a blip in the Rugby Championship, not terrible, but it dropped below its kind of usual high standards. But yeah, man, Springboks set piece was very good against the All Blacks. So yeah, bit of recency coming in here, but man, Malcolm Marx has been in great form. Locks, I'm going to go with an Irishman, an old Tyke Byrne. Ireland only played, was it three warm-up games? The Italian game, the English game, and the Samoan game. And they shifted the lineups around a lot, so it was kind of hard to see one player play in the same position week in, week out. But still, every time Tyke Byrne plays, he looks phenomenal. And his ability to also pinch ball is just gold. There's not many players like Malcolm Marx and like Tyke Byrne who can just at least win you 1 turnover every game. I think in that last game, Byrne won 2 against Samoa. And he's always one of their top tacklers. He's usually behind Van der Fleer, but not far. And certainly in terms of locks, who get through a heap of tackles, he's phenomenal. So I think he's hitting the World Cup in pretty good form. But he's pretty consistent, so I'm not sure he's one that ever kind of drops out of form. Maybe a kind of slightly more left field pick for the other lock. I'm going to go with a Samoan guy and Theo McFarland. There would not be many more athletic locks than Theo McFarland. He has been kind of starting his Samoan campaign on the bench. He was one of the more late arrivals to that Pacific Nations Cup squad. But we saw him start that final game against Ireland, and he was just on fire. He was stealing line-out ball, which I think they should give you credit for if you're playing fantasy. He was their top tackler with 14, which they'll definitely give you credit for. He got 40 meters. He was winning line-outs. So, yeah, man, he's amazing. He is a real freak of nature in the best kind of way. Just does things that other guys don't, with that kind of body shape, don't seem to be able to do. So, yeah, man, between him and Tyke Byrne, you've got two pretty kind of special locks, and just that they're not. I mean, there's always a place for your stock standard, high work rate, wins balls, cleans rucks, tries not to get cards. Scott Barrett, makes tackles kind of lock, but just for a little bit of X factor, Theo McFarland, he's pretty bloody good. Another South African, goodness me. Maybe it's partly a bit of recency bias because they blew the All Blacks off the park in that last game, but Peter Steff. And they blew Wales off the park the week before. Peter Steff in both of those games has also been in kind of 2019 era Peter Steff du Toit form. There's a little bit of talk about, like, since his surgeries and whatnot after the last World Cup, that he might have kind of slumped, that he wasn't able to get back into it. Well, he is peaking at just the right time. Top tackler against New Zealand, which kind of makes sense because he was the only forward who didn't get substituted with the old 7-1 split. But still, top tackler with like 16. He's been winning turnovers. He's been making tackles, which is kind of his bread and butter. But he's also been scoring tries and getting like try assists. So, yeah, he seems really fired up. Yeah, Peter Steff du Toit is in great form. So, long may that continue. Another Lucy in old Pablo Matera. Now, it's an interesting one because the Argentinians haven't played that much. So, it's kind of hard to say what form he's been in now. But in the Rugby Championship, he was in great form. He was the Pumas' top ball carrier. And I think the top ball carrier across the entire tournament. So his work rate is insane. He beats tackles, he makes tackles, and he makes offloads and stuff as well. I think he was the top offloader of the Rugby Championship joint with a couple of other players as well. So, yeah, if you want a guy who's going to be super high work rate, you'd be hard-pressed to go past Pablo Matera. And then last Lucy, I've gone with a Kiwi in Adi Savia. Adi Savia's got a knack, kind of like Tyke Byrne I mentioned, of always looking like he's in good form. Like that New Zealand performance against South Africa was pretty forgettable from a New Zealand perspective, but he still looked pretty good. He was the only New Zealand forward to get over 30 metres. Most of them didn't even get past 20. He beat like 4 defenders, which was more than any forward. I think Tokiaho was the next best with 3. Most of them were at 0 because the New Zealand attack was kind of pretty blunt. But I mean, just generally across this Rugby Championship, prior to that, he's been a key cog in New Zealand's campaign. And when you look at that New Zealand squad, he's one of the guys right now where if you're talking about like who are the best players in the world, Adi Savia is certainly one of the first names in that conversation from a New Zealand perspective. So yeah, I think he goes into the World Cup in pretty good form despite that last game from New Zealand not being flash. Halfback, I mean, basically right now there's DuPont and there's the rest, isn't he? I mean, he can kick a ball that hard that he made it go flat the other day against Scotland. So that's pretty good, Nick. He seems to be just on another level. He got 2 try assists against Australia, which when it's DuPont doesn't seem that flash. It just seems kind of normal because we expect that kind of stuff from him, which is weird. It's weird when you see him just play a good game that it seems like a bad game because you're used to seeing him play insanely well. But I'm not saying that was against Australia, but just generally, he is a hard guy to judge because he is just, I think, generally on another level. He beats defenders, he boots the leather off the ball, like I said. He makes tackles, he's a real terrier. So, yeah, big campaign for him coming up at the World Cup. 10 is a tough one, but I have gone with Richie Mo'unga from the All Blacks. I think he has taken away the conversation here in New Zealand about who is the best 10 between him and Beauden Barrett. It's now just Richie Mo'unga, and he has, for the most part, setting the All Blacks attack alight. The Rugby Championship and prior to that last game against the Box, New Zealand's attack looked really sharp, and Richie Mo'unga is a big part of that. And he's doing the kind of extra stuff like the clutch goal kicks, like that winning goal kick against the Australians. So, yeah, beating defenders, making his tackles, distributing well, doing what he needs to do. He needs to have a good campaign if the All Blacks are going to be in it at the end of the comp. But yeah, so far his form this year has been pretty good. Midfield, it pains me to pick this guy here because he's injured. Jonathan Dante. He's going to miss at least the first game against the All Blacks, which is awful news, but at least he's not out for the World Cup, which is the good news. But I think Dante's kind of put in a couple of man-of-the-match performances in the last couple of games he's played, man. Defensively, he has just been an absolute powerhouse. He's kind of like Byrne and Marks, being able to win just regular turnovers. He got 3 against Fiji. Like the Fijian attack, which has been really sharp all year. I mean, their world ranking shows you how good they've been. Looked relatively blunt against France's defence, and Dante was a big part of shutting that down. He's been making his tackles. And then even in that last game against Australia, we did see a little bit more of what he can do ball in hand. Like carrying against Carter Gordon. Just looked really tidy. So Jonathan Dante, hopefully he makes a speedy recovery, but don't pick him in your fantasy side just yet because he's still injured. Another Irishman, this time in the backs, Gary Ringrose. Again, it's hard with the amount of chopping and changing the Irish done. Not as many games as maybe some of the other teams, but whenever he's been there, he's looked sharp. Like the Irish attack didn't look sharp against Samoa. They kind of struggled, albeit in the rain. But he comes on, I think, with 16 or 15 minutes to go, and he beats 4 defenders, which is, I think, either the most or the most equal of any Irish player in that game. So he just adds a bit of X factor, which sometimes is exactly what you need. He's got great link-up plays, been reading the game really well. I've been a big fan of him for a wee while, and he's seemingly getting more plaudits as time goes on and as the Irish side has more success. But yeah, Gary Ringrose, I think he's in great form. Left winger, you'd be hard-pressed to go past Scotland's Duhan van der Merwe. He has been an absolute wrecking ball attacking powerhouse. He got 2 tries and beat 11 defenders against Georgia. Remember when the Scots didn't even score any points in the first half, but Duhan still looks incredibly, incredibly dangerous. He's always right up there for run meters, and he's always up for defenders beaten. He's got that great talent of just like, you know exactly what he's going to do, but you just can't stop it. So hard to kind of plan against old Duhan, but he's been in cracking form. A Fijian on the right wing, Celestino Rabutamanda. He was in great form in Super Rugby and has transferred that form over to international level as well, which is great to see. I think the Fijians are doing well with that kind of core of their squad, having played Super Rugby together. He's got a try in the recent weeks. He got 2 try assists against England. He's always chewing through the run meters. He's always breaking tackles. He got beaten one-on-one by Johnny May in that game against England, but then gave it back to him with a bit of an extra burn when he skinned him on the outside. Like, yeah, he's got gas to burn, which is no surprise from a Fijian winger, to be honest. But yeah, Celestino Rabutamanda, very, very dangerous. And in that pool they're in with Wales and Australia and Georgia, it's going to be a good chance for him to impress. And lastly, an Italian, I've gone with Ange Capuozzo. He's only played a couple of games since coming back from injury, but goodness me, he's been on fire as well. I think in that game against Romania, and it's only Romania, but he alone got like 250 run meters, which is just insane. Like for a guy to get 3 digits in run meters is usually the pinnacle. If you can crack 100, that's a great effort. And fullbacks tend to get, 40, 50 if it's a tight game because they get a bit of extra space at the back. 80 if they're running it a lot. If a guy gets an intercept, he's going to crack 80, 100 meters, but 250 is just nuts. So he's beating defenders, he's getting tries, setting up tries. He's in a tough pool, but you can bet they'll be doing their homework on this guy at fullback. So yeah, that's Form 15 for this Rugby World Cup. I noticed I didn't have any Welsh guys or Japanese guys. I mean, Jack Morgan has been in great form for Wales. So I think he's certainly one of the Form 15. Seal Kolisi, since coming back from injuries, likewise been in good form. Ika Neveri, the hooker for Fiji, I think he's coming into some good form at the right time, and he's been generally pretty good all year, but I will not just go on about rabbit hole about honourable mentions because I'll be here all day. But yes, Form 15. Who else do you guys think is in good form? We knock on wood that there are no more kind of late injury withdrawals. We hope all these guys are fit. Do your homework if you are picking fantasy sides to make sure everyone's been fit and named and not suspended. Scott Barrett, no, fit. free. Owen Farrell, banned. Billy Vunipola, banned. Xander Ferguson, available. Do your homework before you pick him. And yeah, check out Planet Rugby down in the description for the full article. But yes, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.